y'all. You're listening to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast which is normally a place for friends to recap romance media, but sometimes just turns into a Keanu Reeves stan platform. Today is one of those days, because HB Taylor introduced me to The Lake House with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. I got to hang out with Taylor and gush about architecture because she's one of our Patreon supporters at the Competence Boner level. Everyone at this level is invited to co-host an episode with me. And I have to say, this was so much fun. Taylor was a dream to record with and the perfect person for this movie. She's so wise in picking it. If you want to check out our Patreon for other benefits, we've got 150 bonus episodes and more. Go to patreon.com/Heaving Bosoms podcast. So let's jump right into our recap of The Lake House. Oh my God, listener, I'm so rude. She just started talking and I was like, don't you dare. Don't you dare.
It's true. I was going to say, I did remember this movie fondly, but I hadn't seen it in years. So I was like kind of looking to see like when it came out, like how it was received. And I think it was like right as rom-coms were sort of like on the descent in Hollywood. And so like, I feel like a lot of the less favorable reviews are more reacting to that.
Sure.
Because I watched, like when I watched it again, I thought it really held up. So
it totally does. And like, I don't know, I trust Keanu Reeves.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely. Yes.
Like, because he's always been a conscientious king his whole life and his whole career. Yes. So I didn't think it would be like super misogynistic or anything, but like it really held up for real.
And that's the thing. So the other thing about this movie is I love time nonsense in movies. Like I feel like I don't care if it makes sense, like or barely makes sense.
Yeah.
As long as it's not so insane that like you're stopping to like figure it out during the movie. Like that's kind of my like hard limit. But yeah. So I feel like there was one part where I was like, oh man, I do not understand why this is happening this way. But that was the only point in the movie.
Oh my God, so. I can't wait to find out because I think there's like one or two parts and I'm wondering if they overlap at all. But first we have to introduce listener to you. Listener, this is Taylor.
Yes, okay.
HB Taylor.
So, I'm Taylor. Yes. I'm an architect. So that was the other the other thing I really liked about this movie. Hollywood is not great at architects. I mean, they're probably way worse at like doctors and lawyers, but like this movie did not do like a bad job at architecting, which I was pretty impressed by too. So kudos to the screenwriter, I guess, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it helped that it wasn't like workplace set, you know?
Yes, for sure. There was enough kind of character to it to give the movie that flavor without like getting too in the weeds. So
absolutely. And like I feel like, you know, from a layperson's perspective, obviously, they really capitalized on like the characterization of architecture and like, you know, molding something and making it fit in a place and, you know, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which was really gorgeous.
They have like a really like interesting conversation about the house and like how like, you know, ultimately like it was like not like meant for connection. It was for taking stuff off. And I was like, that's true. I agree with that. So, yeah. I thought they were pretty smart about it.
They really were. And I forget, I'll ask you when we get there, because I forget whether or not the stairs were already there or if he hadn't put the stairs on yet when she got there. Listen, listener, there's time nonsense in here.
Yes.
And it's rough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of bouncing.
Yeah. Well, and the bouncing, I think they handled really well too. Okay.
Yes.
So we've got, I didn't write down their names. Oh no, I always write down their names.
I did. I took some notes. I'm pretty sure they're almost exclusively Keanu and Sandra in my notes.
I love it. So Keanu and Sandra are here. That's what we're going to do for the rest of the time. I'm sorry, listener.
Right. They're pretty, like it's an Alex. I think it was a Kate. It's gonna be.
It was
Keanu
an Alex and a Kate, but no, it's Keanu and Sandra, Sandy.
Yes.
And I think this was their like second movie together, right? Because Speed came out in 1994.
Yes, I don't think they'd done anything else. I know. So apparently, like the name of the dog, like was Jack. That was supposed to be Sandra Bullock's like personal reference to Speed, I guess. But
that's great.
That makes me think this was the second time since then that they had worked together. So
yeah, well, that's awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we open up and Sandy is leaving this lake house. She's like, "Goodbye, lake house."
Yes, she's moving out.
Oh, you've treated me well, lake house, but it's time to go.
It's got, right. So we see it for the first time. It's got a tree in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Apparently, I looked this up. They built this house specifically for the movie and then tore it down afterwards, I guess.
How dare they?
I know. Yeah. The other thing, so I guess they needed heaters for all the actors because it was apparently freezing.
It looked like an ice box.
I know, like no shit. It's a glass house on a lake. I lived in Chicago and we had to like hair dry like the cellophane around the windows, like just to cold air out. And it reminded me of that.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, I guess it had running water, but no bathrooms, which also like. No shit. It's a glass house. I don't know where you're going to put them. So.
So these were all my questions for you specifically, because there was a tree in there and we don't get like a super great view of like, you know, the layout overall. They do a really good job of being like, all the windows are reflective right now.
Right.
You can't see inside.
It's like mostly kitchen shots. I feel like that house may have been just a kitchen. I'm not sure. I don't know where anyone would have slept or.
Yeah, I really truly think so. So, and I paid special attention to it because I'm narrating Toxic Desire right now. Mm-hmm. And the people who live like on the sex planet, all of them have clear houses. Because everybody loves watching each other have sex. But they talk about their like inner rooms where you can have some privacy, where like the toilet is. If you want to have sex in private, it's not suggested. But if you want some privacy when you're having sex, if you have to, there are inner rooms. And I didn't see a goddamn inner room in there.
No. One time they show like they show like the attic a little bit because there's a box in the attic, and I don't know where that attic even was.
That attic was in a different house because the tree was in the attic.
It had to be. Yes. Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. Right. But yeah. So beautiful house, a little impractical. But
I know. I still want to live there.
Designed by an architect. Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Of course. But maybe just in the summer.
Yeah, in the summer, I do need like 2-foot glass. You know what I mean? Like really thick glass.
Yes.
But yeah, I couldn't decide if that house was a nightmare or like a dream, you know?
Yes. I think it
swings wildly.
A great way to describe it.
Okay, so she's leaving this house. We don't know why, but she's melancholy AF. Okay?
Yes. Very moody.
Wow. She's real mad about something. And I still don't really know what it is because the timeline is so fucked in my brain.
Correct. Yeah. She's starting a new job, I guess. So maybe she's moving closer to her job. Yeah. And then meanwhile, you know, cut to him kind of moving in, but it's snowy.
Oh, it's snowy now.
We're meant to think he's moving in after her, but
yeah,
we find out later it's 2 years earlier.
It's 2 years earlier. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. So she leaves a note for the next tenant, the tenant after her. She's like, tenant, I hope that you love this house as much as I did. I hope you love peeing with sunlight just down upon you. Like, I'm sorry about the dog footprints.
Yes, there's paw prints and there's a box in the attic, which she's just never opened.
Never opened it in her life.
Wasn't curious at all. Which, you know, is probably the first thing I would have done if I was moving in a new house. But I guess she's a renter, so maybe she's like, I'll just leave this box alone. Anyways, Keanu gets this note, and he's more confused about the paw prints than the box, I guess. There's neither one is there, but he sees that there's no paw prints and basically thinks she's a crazy lady, I guess.
Absolutely. And so he writes back and he's like, I don't know what you're smoking, but no paw prints over here. Also, nobody's lived here for years before me, and it is a crap house. Like, it is a mess right now. And meanwhile, in her timeline, it had been fixed up by him, listener.
Yes. She's like, no, I know what house you think I'm living in. I know that house. It wasn't that house. So,
I love the shade she throws, the subtle shade, where she's like, I know exactly what house you're talking about, but I don't think that a cottage should be 6,000 square feet. And like, fair.
Yes.
That's a fine assessment to me.
Rather live in a... For sure.
Yeah.
But then the dog does show up, right? As Keanu's kind of slowly, I think he's doing something with concrete or paint or something, and this dog just shows up out of nowhere, this time traveling dog. And he sees the paw prints being made, and that's kind of like the first inkling that both we and he has that like something is going on. And I really like that they didn't drag this mystery out.
Same.
Like, they get right to the point pretty quickly. So.
Yeah. I love it. And both of them are like, this is super weird. Well, okay. Sorry, listener. So she has a really bad day at the beginning. It's Valentine's Day. She started this new job that's really stressful because she's a big time doctor. And she meets her mom in like a plaza in Chicago, Dealey Square.
Yes. So Daily Plaza. And just to say, like, they have great Chicago locations in this movie. Like, I felt like they really made a meal out of it being set in the city, and like they took a lot of advantage of it. Like, and for a movie that is at least like a little bit about architecture, I feel like that made a lot of sense. So they had a great location scout. but yeah, so they're in Daily Plaza. It's the one in Chicago with the big Picasso sculptures in it. And so she's talking to her mom. Yeah, she's just kind of getting used to being a doctor at this new hospital, basically.
Yeah. And I feel like her dad died semi-recently. And so she's like, she's talking to her mom about the way that she's coping with her grief. And then screech, crash, bang, curse splat, somebody gets hit by a bus. Oh no. And so
there's a lot of conspicuously not showing his face.
Oh yeah.
We're like, who is this mystery man that's been hit by a bus?
Yes, it's just a stranger. And it is. So she runs over there because she's like, I'm a big time doctor. And she's calling 911 at the same time. And boy, is he there just face down on the pavement.
Yes.
And we find out that he dies in her arms.
Yes. Yeah. It's very sad. She's really torn up about it. Her coworker, who is played by Shohreh Aghdashloo, who is just a total treasure in whatever movie she's in.
Every time.
And certainly here as well. She recommends that she go back to a place she was happy, like get out of the city a little bit. So she does drive back to that lake house that she does not live in anymore.
That's right. And apparently nobody else does either. It is abandoned again.
No.
So she opens up the mailbox.
But then,
right?
Yeah, I don't know if, she was just maybe checking to see if her note was still there or something, or maybe, I wasn't really clear on why she opened up this mailbox when she gave them a forwarding address. Maybe just to check that there wasn't any mail in there for her.
Oh, yeah, because there's nobody to forward the mail. I didn't even think about that. Because that was one of her things, like, please forward my mail. It's a shit show over at the post office. Also fair.
Yes. Also fair. Yeah, so she does find a note in there for her, which maybe this is just magic mailbox mechanics, I guess. Maybe it hasn't been picked up yet. Keanu just popped it in there, but it is a note from him saying you're a little crazy. It's actually 2004, and can't forward your mail because your address doesn't exist.
Your address doesn't exist. I went to your place and it is not constructed yet. It is being constructed.
Yes.
And,
exactly.
And she's like, oh, well, you're crazy pants because it's 2006. And then finally they both decide that romance reasons time travel exists now. There are two things that time travel in this movie. There are letters in that letterbox and that goddamn dog.
And the dog. Those are the only two things. It's just time travel nonsense. We won't question it too much.
That's all it is.
Yes.
That's all it is. It's bananas. That dog is still a mystery to me to this day. I'm very into it, though.
Yeah.
So, all right. So then what happens? So they start talking about what they like. He's like, you know, we never talk about what we like. We've only been talking about how weird time travel is. And she's like, I mean, fair, you know, like, I feel like that is something that we should be talking about. No, she doesn't say that. That's my fanfic.
Yeah, well, because I'm trying to remember. At some point, I think he tells her a little bit about himself. Like, I think at this point in the movie, we've seen him kind of meet up with his brother. We've seen his dad briefly. There's a scene like it's very like it's Christopher Plummer as Keanu's dad, and he's just doing his like level best to embody like every stereotype of old architects that exist.
Yes.
I've definitely met this stereotype before.
Yes.
But he's got a bow tie. He's in this like beautifully like lit studio full of drafting boards. There's not a computer in sight. There's like a big poster that says architecture in the background and a lot of like lovingly rendered, very impractical chalk drawings on blackboards. And it's very like, you know, he's got his minions, which includes Keanu's brother, like kind of congregated around him. And this is actually, so this is number 2 of like ways that Hollywood like tells people that they're architects.
Ooh,
which
tell me
is
everything.
like they're clustered around a large model. Like,
yeah,
like movies love a large model. Like way number 1, we also see in the beginning of the movie, we see Keanu on his like job site with his hard hat. That's like the first way. That's like,
right.
You know, that's I'm an architect, like on the job.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so they've got this large model, and the brother says something about the loop being a fugue state, which is definitely like the sort of bullshit that you would tell an old architect during a crit. but yeah, so it was a very good setup for like an old architect scene, and it was funny because this brother is played by Eben Moss-Backrack, and I'm kind of used to him playing mosely hipster assholes.
Yes, hipster assholes. Wasn't he in Girls?
Yes,
he was Marnie's boyfriend in Girls.
Yeah, he was Girls. I think I've not seen The Bear yet, but I think he's in that too, which is also set in Chicago. But I guess maybe in 2006 that wasn't his like thing yet. He hadn't been so typecast, because that's not really who he's playing, like this very kind of sweet younger brother character.
And earnest, you can tell he desperately wants his dad's approval, and he can never get it. And the two brothers have sort of gone on two different paths. The little brother has stuck around and been like, I'm going to be you 2.0 and you're going to love me someday. And Keanu has been like, I'm going to go be a vagabond condo builder.
Right. Yes.
And I'll see you never.
Yeah, they like, because he meets up with his brother like after the scene where his brother and his dad are in the architecture office, and like his dad just sort of like, we find out later they haven't spoken in years, his dad just sort of like nods at him and walks off. So they don't have a great relationship, but he takes his brother out to a bar, and he tells his brother he bought a lake house.
Yeah.
Without being like, hey, I bought our family's lake house.
Yeah, I bought like the lake house.
Yeah, he's just like, no, I bought a lake house.
Listen, it's a soft launch. I respect it.
Right. And then that's when they go, he takes his brother to go check and see what Sandra's building, like where this forwarding address she's given him is. And that's when we find out this is just like a big empty construction site with like a large rendering on the corner. And so this is not 1620 North Racine is not a real address, apparently.
Okay.
This is filmed at like I think it was Halstead in Chicago. It's basically the distribution center for the Chicago Tribune newspaper. You could kind of see like behind and I was just imagining like all of the people that live at that corner, like seeing that giant address and rendering and just being like so disoriented. I'm sure they knew they were filming a movie, but like I know when I lived in Chicago, it was around the time that the Empire show with Taraji P. Henson was being filmed, and that should tell you around when that was. And it was set in New York, but they filmed in Chicago. And at one time, I walked out of like my work building to go to the L, and they had like completely redecorated it as like a New York subway stop. And
wow.
Like, hold up. I still obviously knew where it was, but I feel like the people who were around when they were filming like this big, you know, like fake banner of
it's like Bizarro World.
It's like, what? Yeah. That made me laugh a little bit.
I love it. And I love the little very subtle brother moments, because he hasn't told his brother why they're there. He hasn't told his brother anything. And so the brother's like, oh yeah, you coming to visit someone here? Let's ring the bell. Beep, beep, or whatever.
He's super sweet. Like he's just kind of along for the ride. Like all through the movie, he's just, you know, Keanu kind of tells him about Sandra's character without really telling him. And he's very supportive and all of that. So he was a very sweet character, this brother. So
So then he's like, I'm an architect. I like doing these stuff. So how about I show you what I like, and we walk around the city together on Saturday. And he puts like this whole map into the mailbox of like, here's your first stop, here's your second stop, and writes a letter to go along with it that's like, my dad brought me to this one, and it's like the grandmother of all buildings or something.
Yeah. And this was like such a sweet, like I thought this was a huge architecture nerd thing to do, but I did look up all the locations on his map because I'm also a huge architecture nerd.
Yay!
Like, I had to make sure he wasn't like taking her on a terrible tour or anything, and he wasn't. He did a good, or I guess the prop master who made this map did a great job with all of the locations. He's got like a couple of like the bridges. He's got like the Michigan Avenue Bridge. He has one of my favorite buildings in downtown Chicago on there, which is the Inland Steel Building. So, you know, good job, Keanu.
Wow. So I went on a work trip that was in Chicago, and on like one of the days I had off, I just decided that I was going to randomly go on one of those architecture river tours.
The boat tour? Yeah,
the boat ones. And I have to say, I didn't have like high hopes. I was like, oh, I think it's gonna be cool. You know what I mean? Like, that's neat. But I was also hungover at the time, and I was riveted through the whole thing. Chicago's like, they did such a good job presenting everything.
They really did. And like as you see her kind of walking through like the street, they show a couple of the buildings that he had like on his map, and then they kind of switch to, I assume this was also on his map, but they didn't show like the Gold Coast area because the map was folded. So I'm just gonna guess that all of those beautiful houses they had, I recognized a couple of them. They're just like a little bit north of the Loop. Oh, cool. And she talks about, you know, one of her favorites, and he like it's really funny the way they do it. I mean, because it's a movie, even though it's like an epistolary romance with letters, I mean, they've got to cut it like they're having a conversation. Yes. It would be too weird otherwise. So there's this whole tour is kind of overlaid with them, like, you know, having a conversation back and forth about this tour.
Yeah, it's all voiceover.
Yes. Yeah, it's all voiceover. Although every time that happened, I did imagine them basically in the first, like the way they did it in the very first scene, where they're basically just passing notes back and forth in a mailbox. Yeah. Like, Keanu's out there and his, like, I was just like thinking about him like out there in his bathroom with just like a stack of Post-its, and they're basically texting each other back and forth. So I did think about that a little bit whenever, like, through the movie they would do this voiceover.
Totally.
But yeah, they do it pretty well without it being distracting or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that,
and
so.
it's scripted really well because you can see how like some of them are thoughts that one character would think, and then the other is what would actually come from a letter. And so I think it's done really, really well. And thank you for bringing that up because it's very important. When they're putting notes in the mailbox at the very beginning, back and forth, when they're like figuring out that this is a cosmic fuck up of some sort.
Right. Yeah.
The little flag on the mailbox keeps on going up and down when they each put their response in.
Right. They just watch the flag, and like the dog watches the flag. And so yeah, they're just like, every time there's voiceover in the movie, they're really just like standing out there watching the flag go up and down.
Yeah, it's perfect. Really cute.
But, yes.
Okay, so one of the things she says in voiceover is, I really wish we could have done this tour together.
Yes.
And then, boy, I gasped, Taylor. I gasped because she looks over and there's this graffiti wall. It's all like weathered, and it says, "Kate, I'm here with you. Thanks for the lovely Saturday together."
Which is it's just perfect. Like I love that. Like I feel like 2 years is a believable amount of time for that graffiti to still be there. Like he's maybe I'll give it to them.
I absolutely.
Longer and probably not. But
if it was 10 years, that wouldn't even be there. Like the building might not be there anymore.
Yeah, he's left this beautiful message for her. I wrote this down because it just went like totally unremarked upon, but they're continuing in their little Chicago tour to do voiceover of things that they like. Yeah. Like he's taking her on this tour and she's telling him some of her favorite things. And one of the things she said was she loves the smell of her dog's paws. And there's just
what?
It's a weird one.
Was that?
There's a couple of moments like that where the movie just sails on by. Sure. I'm sure you do.
And at that point, I just started thinking about like weird scenarios in which she would be able to lean over and just get a huff of that paw, you know?
Yes. Yes. Like, and why? And it's like this dog's outside a lot. Like, whatever.
Again, we're suspending our disbelief. Sandy gets to be a wild card, and that's fine.
One of her favorite things.
Okay, so then she is like, I'm obviously going insane. I have to run this by someone else. So she goes to her mom, and she's like, Mom, look at these letters. What do you think? And she's like, he seems like a really nice boy. He's got nice handwriting.
He's got nice handwriting. Yes. And we did see the handwriting in the beginning of the movie over like the opening credits. It is very nice.
Nice.
I don't know a single architect or doctor who has handwriting that nice, but I guess, maybe that's one of the things they love about each other. But yeah, she says he's got great handwriting, and then she dismisses the fact that he's 2 years in the past as a detail, which
it's just a tiny detail.
Like a level of unconcern that I think we should all aspire to. But, honestly.
Yeah,
it's just, you'll figure it out. Whatever.
It's fine. No worries. This is not out of the ordinary at all in Mom's world.
Yeah, because in the meantime, Sandra's been telling Keanu in letters, like, about what the future is like. And, like, in reality, this would be a great opportunity for some sports bookmaking scheme or some sort of, like, stock play, but she mostly uses it to make like robot jokes and talk about how they have the same dog. So to each their own. So.
I like that you're thinking of the real future, though. That's very important.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, on a much more depressing note, I mean, well, I guess that didn't happen. She could have warned him in 2008 what was about to happen to the architecture job
Honestly.
situation. But yeah, she mostly just kept it to like to telling him about the dog Jack and
Uh-huh.
man, what else? Yeah, she's like, yeah, we all what did she say? She's like, we all wear shiny jumpsuits now. It's
Yeah.
just, very, very tame future related jokes.
Flying cars, regular jets and stuff.
Right. Exactly.
And so now we see him with his dad, and his dad is
Yes.
in his like ornate library that has a loft in it and
Oh, yes.
shit.
Beautiful.
It's nice.
He's definitely an old, famous architect. You could tell by his loft. And he uses this opportunity. I guess he hasn't seen Keanu in several years. And he basically passive aggressively criticizes his career and calls him a sleazy condo developer.
That was so rude, Dad.
Yes, for sure. Very rude.
How very dare you, sir?
And yeah, like Keanu says he basically explains why he's been gone for years, like saying he tells his dad he was trying to forget him, kind of / forgive him. So they have a very complicated relationship, but it's probably not made better by his dad taking pot shots at his choice of job all the time.
No, and this was really interesting to me.
One of the reasons he left in the first place.
I mean, I think it's very illustrative, definitely. But yeah, this dialogue is really interesting to me because the dad says, "Where have you been?" And he says, "I was trying to forget you."
Yes.
The dad says, "Did you succeed?" And he says, "No." And then the dad just like sort of, arrogantly sits there and says, "Let me know if you'd like help remembering."
Right. So you don't, and I don't know that you ever really find out the detail. I mean, it kind of comes out that, him and Keanu's mom had a difficult relationship and that sort of thing. They never really get into what happened exactly, but you get the sense that it's sort of about his career choices and also just kind of about his dad being like one of that, like, that stereotype of the creative genius who's just terrible to all of the people that love him.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, it seems like he's one of those very, very successful, lauded people that start believing their own mystique.
Yes.
And start seeing the people who like sort of make up the structure of their life. Like his life wouldn't go if his wife hadn't like sacrificed and been with the kids and supported him. But it just seems like he's one of those people that like takes everyone for granted because he's so special.
Yes. Yeah. It's very easy for him to forget all of the people that like made his career possible and all of that. Yeah.
Okay. Now something very important happens.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it the tree?
It's the tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's in a voiceover letter she's written to him like about like being lonely, and there are shots of her like playing chess with the dog, and she talks about missing trees. So
the lake house trees specifically.
Yes. So he steals one from his job site. And in a very beautiful, like very romantic, like slightly nonsensical way, like he brings this tree to the construction site of her building, and a tree just sprouts up out of nowhere, like right in front of her during a rainstorm. And I loved this. It did strike me funny that as this building was being built, no one would have noticed like a brand new street tree just like right in front of the building.
Nobody would have been like, well, this was obviously a mistake.
Yeah. I would guess that like several people would have had many questions about this, but we just kind of gloss over it, and she gets her tree that she missed, and it shelters her during the rain. And I feel like this is one of those shots that they used in the trailer, like, of the movie to explain. This is what time nonsense means in the context of this particular romantic movie. Like,
it is really good shorthand. You're totally right.
Yeah.
Okay, because I need to tell you the journey I went on during this whole period. Because frankly, I think that this is the one moment in the movie that makes everything else not make sense. So we've arrived. It's here. Yes. Because when I saw this thing, she specifically says in her letter, I miss the trees, and I miss specifically the trees at the lake house.
Right.
And so then we get a shot of him just like looking out this construction trailer, and there's a bunch of trees that are, in pots just waiting
in the
to
boxes,
be put on the job site. Yeah. And so my notes in all caps says, then he gets the trees and he plants them at the lake house. And like those were going to be the trees that she missed because they weren't there before, but like they are there now. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that would make sense. And it would make sense in the context, but then they do this fucking just appearing tree at her new house. Wow. The whole thing.
Right. So it's just like any time he's changing time, like, I mean, does she now remember the way it was before?
I know.
Like, because, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, when he isn't dead, did he just like appear out of nowhere? Like, did the brother like remember him being dead? And
these are all the things.
I had so many questions about that. I was like, how is this gonna work? But yes.
Yeah, like whose memory does it impact? Who does it not?
Right.
And if you do something in one timeline and it changes in the other one, then like why do they know each other at all? Because she wouldn't have gone to the lake house to get the letter and do the blood and like it's the one thing in the movie that doesn't make a lick of sense, but I'm fine with it.
No, like I've gotta feel like the second that tree was there, she just felt like it had always been there, or maybe at least everyone else in the world besides her, it had all, because I just can't wrap my brain around.
No, I can't either. And the movie throws some hard shade, which I really, really love later on. Because like there's a moment, we'll get to it, but like she specifically like looks up at this very symbolic tree before smooching on another dude.
Yes.
And it's so she obviously remembered. Listen, it doesn't matter. Okay. So now he promises that they're going to be together someday and he's going to take care of her because she's a big time doctor.
Yes.
And he doesn't mind. Yeah, he doesn't mind being a more like residential, low-key kind of architect. He doesn't need fame or whatever because Keanu really just wants a family with Kate and stuff.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, you can really tell they're falling in love. I feel like he goes to the lake house with his brother, and I feel like he talks a little bit more about that. And that's when he's talking about connection in general. And so his brother describes the house as Le Corbusier meets Frank Lloyd Wright, which is just the opposite of what that house is. So I was like,
wasn't Frank, okay, and this might sound really dumb, but wasn't Frank Lloyd Wright like concrete and Art Deco?
Yes, low and long, like it's kind of like prairie sky. I mean, he did have like his most famous house is probably Falling Water. So he did he liked that relationship with nature. But then they talk about how this house is like completely closed off from nature, and it doesn't have that that connection. It's all about containment and ownership. And I was like, this was like a very smart conversation about architecture perceived by a very or maybe the beginning was dumb, or maybe I'm just dumb and they're right. It is right, but it ended on a good note, and they kind of used that to tie the theme of like connection back.
Yeah.
So that was like a really nice moment.
Well, and it's nice in a lot of ways. Like, I think it was really, really smart, not only, I guess, from an architecture, it sounded very smart from my point of view, but I'm obviously leaving that to you.
It ended on a very smart. I mean, and honestly, it's totally possible they just threw some like more well-known architects out there. Like, whatever. People will at least know who these people are. Dad used to play cards with them, which I don't know about that. The timing on that, frankly, would have been very old.
Very geriatric.
But yes.
Yeah, well, and okay, so the other thing that it does is it sets up Keanu is sort of trying to get his brother to come into himself and stop trying to do exactly what his dad did.
Stop trying to please their dad.
Yeah, because his dad's never going to respect him for that. And he might not respect him for anything. And Keanu's trying to show him. So in a way, he's like, look, our dad's career was beautiful. Like, he built this house. But as Taylor said, it's about like control and containment.
Right.
You get to
this
view
house
all of the
tree in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But you can't get to it really, and you can't touch any of the other nature. Like, it's like a long pier all the way to the middle of this house. So it was a very, very kind of symbolic. I like that, I guess whatever. I think apparently they had an architect who designed this house in like a few weeks, and they built it in like a few weeks after that. Like, but whoever did it, like they did a great job kind of tying it thematically to the movie. So.
Really, really, they did. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then Keanu says, Dad knew how to build a house. He did not know how to build a home.
Yes.
And so I think that we can do I think he wants us to do what he couldn't, and he won't be able to ever say that out loud. But we can't just recreate what he does. We need to think about the way that, the way that a house relates to connection.
Yes.
The missing component in all of his dad's work.
Like a really nice, it's sort of like, I love when like no one in a movie is like really the bad guy. Like everyone's kind of got their own stuff. And so I think that shows like a really like nuanced understanding of their dad. Like, he's never going to be able to like tell us he loves us and is proud of us.
No.
Like, we can do this anyways.
Right. So then the brother's like, well, you talked about visionary vanguard. Is that what it was? Something like that.
Yes. Which, just a terrible name for an architecture firm.
It's really bad. Okay, I'm glad you agree.
It's not good. I really hope it was like some sort of like inside reference to like something their dad had like written or like said in a speech one time. Like, just like a little bit of like, we're his sons and we're gonna like carry this on. So I really hope it was like that sort of reference and not just like, oh, it sounds so cool.
Ew, we're so badass. Yeah. So Keanu says you can have the name, but like I'm not about that anymore.
Yes.
Because I want something different. And it's very clear that what he wants is a future with Kate. So then go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say, I think I know where you're going with this. She basically asks him to in a letter, she asked him to retrieve a copy of Persuasion, which she had left at a train station 2 years before. And he goes to get it and he sees her for the first time. And she calls 2004 a bad hair year for herself.
How dare she?
She looks stunning as always.
How dare, thank you. Because I was going to rant about that for at least 20 minutes.
No, she's gorgeous. She's always gorgeous. Yeah, the idea of her having bad hair is ridiculous. But he also sees, this is the first time we see to her, I guess in 2006 is her ex-boyfriend. In 2004 is her current boyfriend. And I think his name was Morgan. But in my notes, I mostly just called him inadequate boyfriend because this whole movie is just about how he's just like not good enough for her.
I know. And like he tries so hard. He's a try hard.
He does. Too hard. I feel like she thinks she tells him he tried too hard, basically. Yeah. It's just, it just wasn't working. He was meeting like having her meet his parents, a week into their relationship and stuff like that. So he's just, he's at this train station though with her. She kisses this current 2004 boyfriend goodbye, gets on the train. And Keanu, he's gotten persuasion. He like runs after the train, like
he's doing a run.
Yes.
And he's like, I think I saw you. And in the voiceover, she's like, no, you couldn't have. And he's like, long brown hair. What was it, like gentle eyes or something like that?
Yes. Never heard a man describe eyes that way, but I love it. Yes.
Me neither.
Oh man, I wish I could remember exactly what he said about her eyes. It was beautiful, very poetic. Yes.
I'll try to put it on the social media or something. See if I can get my shit together for that. Yeah. So
this thing with the book though, like if I had to have a bing boom bong about like just time nonsense, like I feel like with time travel movies, I'm generally like there's this idea of like fridge logic where it's as long as it makes sense in the moment and you don't have to think about it too hard, then like it doesn't like matter if you're standing in front of the fridge like getting a midnight snack and all of a sudden it occurs to you like, wait a second, like why did she say that the dog hated the snow in 2004 when the dog is supposed to be with Keanu in 2004? Like that's fridge logic. Like that's not gonna like mess up the experience of the movie. This thing with the book though is bigger than that. And like, I guess we can come back to it when she actually finds the book, but I had so many questions about the book.
The book involves breaking and entering.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like, and he could have just mailed it. Like she proves later in the movie you can mail a book. Like, why didn't he just do that? But he just, so again, like, I guess when we get to that point where she finds it, I can re-enter my whole rant about this, but it was just, I was like, what is going on with this?
Yeah. Yes. So then she's at the table, like, writing her next letter to him. And she's like, okay, how about you call me on today's date at, looks at her watch, 9:05 p.m. Yeah. And then the phone rings and everybody, including me, Melody, edge of our seats. Okay. And this proves that at this point, he was dead. Or was he not? Like, was he waiting? Like, or was he, because she said, wait for me. And he knows he can't fuck up those 2 years.
It's like, is he dead or is he just waiting? Yeah, no, that's a great point. I feel like he's dead.
He's dead now.
Because this is 2006 and she doesn't tell him to wait until like 2000.
Wait later. 7.
Yeah, exactly. So, man. But like in some ways, this movie is about a 2-year span, and then in other ways, it's really like 6 years. It's so confusing.
Yes, and like it's also about completely ignoring the idea of time travel creating parallel universes. Don't think about it.
Yes,
it doesn't do that here.
She's like, we're just gonna get around that by having you just promise to meet me in 2 years. Like, just really try hard to remember, like several calendar invites, just like, do not forget to come meet me in 2 years.
Yeah. But, okay, I'm sorry. It's not him. It's her inadequate boyfriend, Morgan. Ex-boyfriend.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, and he's just in town and like casual wants to meet up, even though he then later tries to turn it into a dinner invitation, proving it was in no way casual. They try to get dinner at a place called Il Mare, that I guess is the name of the original Korean movie that this movie was based off of. So yeah, that's the movie's little reference to that. And Il Mare is booked out 4 months in advance. In reality, this is the Park Grill in Millennium Park, and I'm sure it's very nice. It does not have like nicest restaurant in Chicago vibes to me, but they can't get a table there regardless.
Yeah.
Instead they just go kind of walking around Millennium Park, and they're talking, and the inadequate ex-boyfriend mentions somehow this is when she's telling him that he was always like going too fast, and he threw parties for her, and she had to meet all of his friends, and he's like, yeah, and remember that time that you made out with that random guy at that party? And she denies that it was a makeout, and she is lying.
She's lying her ass off, okay? She looks at him. She has the audacity to say, what are we in middle school? I'm sorry. It would only be middle school if he had called it a French kiss. All right, Sandy, yes. There was tongue. Yes. It was a makeout.
Yes, we have an inkling, maybe he's talking about something that happened with Keanu. And we do find out in a scene coming up that, yes, she was indeed making out with someone. We see it.
And it's beautiful. I've never seen anything more beautiful in my life. So, okay.
Yes.
So now it turns out that Jack, so now we're back in 2004. And we're
back in 2004.
He's at the job site. Yeah.
Which must be, I am very fuzzy on the geography of everything that is not downtown Chicago in this movie.
I think the filmmakers were too.
Yes. Yes. So he chases his dog from the job site to this house of what in 2004 is Sandra's current boyfriend. And I don't know, I guess he maybe had a house near this lake house. She was working in Milwaukee and coming down on the train to see him, I think.
Yeah, she was doing her residence. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Keanu chases this dog to Morgan's house, and again, must also be close to the lake house, because I feel like he bought this lake house to be near his job site.
Yeah.
But he realizes that this boyfriend man is dating Sandra, and manages to get an invitation to a party that he's throwing at his house, that boyfriend is throwing at his house for Sandra. It turns out to be a surprise party, which she hates, which is just the sort of thing an inadequate boyfriend would do.
It is. He's such a tryhard.
Surprise parties who do not want them. Yes, exactly. But Keanu, he does come to this party. He brings a date.
Okay. Justice for architect secretary.
Mona.
Yes. Yeah. Justice for Mona. I'm sorry. She is hilarious. Yes. There's a point in the movie where just like comic relief, she looks over at his butt and basically starts like drooling and doing a honk honk sign. Like, it's very good.
Mona is all of us. Yes. So yeah, because I think she shows up twice in this movie. Like, once is in the beginning, basically like as exposition to be like, hey audience, like Keanu bought this house made of glass and stilts on a lake, and then he yells at her and tells her to get boots, which is, she should probably have boots on a construction site
for sure.
But yeah, so she does show up around this time of this party to be like, look at my very inappropriate for a construction site boots that I got. And he takes her to this party.
Yes.
So they go. He ditches her at this party at some point because he finds Sandra, and they end up hanging out outside the house. Because
she's like, I didn't want this fucking party. I've been on a train for 2.5 hours. I probably had to drive from Grand Central, wherever that is in Chicago. I don't like this. This is a surprise party that nobody wants. I don't know any of these people. And so she's doing I'm going to take a breath and sulk a tiny bit privately out on the porch.
Yeah. And so, I mean, who could blame her? She barely knows these people. So Keanu finds her out there, and they have this, kind of get to know you conversation where he knows obviously who she is and she doesn't. And oh, she has the plot of persuasion to him.
Well,
and then
like
Keanu
that
calls it
seems
terrible. And that's why
that
she would
seems
like it.
random though, because he's trying to talk to her about things he knows she likes without being like, I'm a super creeper from the past / future / now /
yeah, he's trying to kind of draw it out and make it feel natural. Yeah,
right. So he's like, hey, do you by any chance like the book Persuasion? And she's like, yeah, it's actually my favorite. And she's like, why would you why? Listen, dude sitting on a porch, why are you randomly asking me that? He's like, oh, no, it's just that a friend gave me the book and I was just wondering if you could tell me what it's about. And I'm like, all right, Keanu, I'm giving you the pass on this one, but like that was clunky as fuck.
It was. It is kind of a chance for them to sort of like underline the point of the movie, which is, you know, people getting like a second chance at love after being separated for a long time. So they kind of bring it back around romantically.
It's lovely. It ends up being lovely, but it was also hilarious because I'm sorry, Taylor, if you were looking back on your life, would you forget about a horrendously terrible, like, surprise party in which a stranger asked you specifically about your favorite book and then you danced and made out? Would you ever forget?
Make out with him, which, like, while you had a boyfriend, I mean, if nothing else, I feel like you would remember, like, oh, this guy was so hot that I cheated just a little bit with my boyfriend with him. Like,
well, okay, so here's my other theory about Sandy in this movie, okay? My big theory, because in this conversation, he asks her about, or I don't remember why, she starts talking about like her first love. And she says that like she ran off to San Francisco and then her dad came and got her and she was in big trouble. And she's like, and the hilarious thing is
she wanted to be a singer.
Yes.
That was her thing. That never comes back.
That never comes back. Which I think we might all be really happy about. I don't know. But she says, the funny thing is, he was so important to me at the time, but I don't even remember what he looked like. And the only way I can explain the rest of this movie is if Sandy suffers from face blindness.
Yes.
I'm serious. This is my big theory.
It must be.
She's got face blindness. If you don't remember that you made out with Keanu fucking Reeves,
I know.
Only 2 years later, you're face blind.
Yes. And his whole response to that, like, San Francisco story about the guy she doesn't remember and being a singer is he just responds, I love San Francisco. Like, that's so sweet, Keanu. I love that you're trying to make that connection. You have nothing to say about the rest of it, but you do love San Francisco and you're trying to relate. And that was great.
It's so good. So then she says like, oh, and then my dad died, which like, Sandy, just, I love your whole soul. And nothing was more relatable than looking at a stranger, oversharing, and then saying, and then this really important person died, and then getting up and walking away. All of this was such a manic melody move.
Been there before.
Been there. Very relatable content. And then he comes over and he's like, so you said you were a singer, huh? Do you think you could sing the song? That's all. She's like, oh, you hear music too? I can't sing, but I can dance.
Yes. So then there's a romantic dance. They do.
It's good. This filmography or cinematography or whatever the fuck it's called is good. It's a big romance dance.
And I mean, they obviously, this is like one of like 2 times basically where they interact face to face in this movie. So I think they did have to really sell it. And they did. They absolutely sold it. They have great chemistry. It's beautifully shot. And they agree too, because at the end they do start making out.
Legit make out.
What she told her boyfriend later.
It is elongated. There is tongue. Sandra Bullock, do not look anybody in their face and try to say that was not a make out. Don't insult us like that. You're gaslighting us right now, Sandy.
She is. And
She
then,
is.
and then it's not like her boyfriend didn't see it, because he does come out to the porch with Keanu's date Mona, and they watch them make out. And
For
then
at
they
least
try
2.5
and play it off
seconds,
as-
right? Like, we don't see
Yes,
them, but it
exactly,
had to
yeah.
be at the minimum
least.
2.5 seconds. And then she goes, Kate.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, just he was telling me about the lake house with his tongue, I think. Oh no, they don't play it off well at all. And then Mona goes,
Right.
Keanu, it's late. I'm your fun secretary who would totally bone you really good, but you're not. Wow.
Yes,
it's
you
late.
really ruined this night that I was very excited about.
She's been looking forward to this.
She had
for
visions
years.
for this party that he did not share.
No, not even close. Okay.
But simultaneously, she's celebrating her birthday in a bar 2 years later with Sheree Agdashlu, and she just happens to remember that exactly 2 years ago, she was making out with a guy who is probably this guy she's been talking about. She just gets like a little light bulb.
Hold on.
And
wow.
Yeah. So she does then ask him in a letter why he didn't. I think what she's asking is why he didn't tell her who he was at the party. And I'm with him on that. Like, she would have thought he was insane.
Yeah.
Like, she's not even come across a magical mailbox yet. Like, this would be nuts. I'm not sure why he waits for her to ask him in a letter, though, like why he didn't tell. I feel like he knows where the timeline must be. Was he just hoping she would remember at some point, and it just spontaneously happened to be exactly 2 years later? Because he's like, yeah, you caught me, it was me. So he owns up to it. But like, when he saw her on the train, he wrote that he saw her. So I thought it was kind of funny that he didn't write and say, hey, like, surprise, I made out with you at a party 2 years ago.
Right.
He kind of waits for her to ask about it.
And he jokes about it being their first fight, because she's like, no, I totally would have responded well to a complete stranger telling me that they know me from my future.
Well, and he says he also says, like, oh, you had a boyfriend at the time. And she's like, oh, he wasn't my boyfriend. He's like, well, was he your brother? And she makes this horrible joke about, like, did he eat a clown for breakfast? And he then describes that as their first fight. Oh my God, it's a terrible first fight. It's
terrible. It wasn't even like so the hilarious thing is the voiceover is played off like it's a real-time fight. But Sandy had to think about, did you eat a clown for breakfast? And then she had to make the choice to put it on paper.
That in a letter.
Like she committed to that.
Yes. She could have said literally anything. Unless they were just having one of their texts, like, you know, popping things back and forth in the mailbox conversations.
Yeah.
Maybe she did think that one through. Again, we don't know, because instead it's shot in this very nice, like, voiceover montage, and they're both sitting, I think, on two sides of the same bench, or two benches near each other in the Lincoln Park Zoo, which is, I can't say the best free zoo in the country, because I have not been to all the free zoos, but the Lincoln Park Zoo is a great free zoo.
It's legit.
They've got polar bears. Yes.
Nice.
I highly recommend that zoo, especially if, like, you just need a place to take your kids in Chicago. Like, cool. It's great. So, yeah. So, yes. So after their first fight, Keanu's dad does have a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And while he recovers in, like, the nicest hospital room in Chicago, and, like, spends his time drawing, like, classical charcoal sketches on trace paper for funsies. Like, I don't know why he's doing this. Yeah, Keanu, I think he tells Sandra kind of about his dad, like, so, because he must like kind of relate that in a letter that he's been sick. And then I think he tells her in this same letter that, kind of about his parents. Yeah, his parents' relationship. And he says that his dad built the lake house with his own hands, which is just truly insane and not a thing that is possible. Especially, it's like a fully steel structure on piers and water. Like, no one is just casually building a house like that in their spare time. So while he's relating that, he talks about his mom and kind of the years that they spent there, and it's more kind of backstory for him and his dad. And then he does go visit his dad in the hospital, and they have another like really like great conversation about architecture. It was like a beautiful discussion about like the context of different cities. They're talking about like how a museum in one city should be different than another because the light is different everywhere you go. And that seemed like something a filmmaker would also appreciate, like the quality of light. So I thought, I don't know, something about this conversation, I could just tell that it was important to the people that put it in the movie. Like, I thought it was just a really beautiful conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I think that if you look at it from a character standpoint, it's important because up until this point, you know, the dad's been taking pot shots about him being a sleazy condo owner or maker. But then in his dad, I feel like is showing him love in the only way that he can.
Yes.
And that's having a serious architecture conversation and being like, no, you're an architect.
They love and they share.
Yeah. Like you understand this because you are also an architect and a talented one. And Keanu's like, you know, quietly being like, holy shit. Oh my God.
Yeah, we're actually like talking about stuff we both like, and like he's like validated my own opinions and like elaborated on them. And it is a very nice moment for them.
Yeah.
And then so we cut back to 2006, and Sandra, I think after finding out that Keanu's dad is in the hospital, she does look up his dad's death certificate.
Yep.
But then she sends him his dad's monograph in the mail, which was just the most beautiful gesture. And she proved that you can send books in the mail.
You can, Keanu.
Like, it's just, yes. That's possible. But yeah, it's also, and it's just so nice too, because like he does it, she said, you know, you don't have to wait 2 years to see that like your dad's life work. And
because in his time the monograph, is that what it is?
Yeah that's usually like what they would call a book like that's kind of like the collected works of like an architect. So I mean, I think a monograph can be on anything, but that's
cool.
What I've always learned.
I called it a coffee table book because I'm uncultured.
I think that would definitely do it a pinch. It is a coffee table book. I would probably put it on a coffee table.
Yeah.
So.
But the important thing from her point of view is like, I can't be there to hold you and like literally be a shoulder to cry on. But if nothing else, I want to show you how much your dad did love you.
Love you. Yeah, there's
in
this
his
beautiful
own way.
photograph of them in the book of him as a kid with his dad at the lake house, and it's lovely. And so, you know, even though his dad has passed, like it kind of, they're able to sort of end it not on a bad note. Like he kind of had some closure with him. He had that really beautiful conversation, and now he's got a way to remember him, and she helped him with that. And so that was lovely.
It really was. And then the way that Keanu just burst into noisy sobs was sweet and sexy and mean.
And you know, I mean, this man is a professional. Like, I mean, he's if you need him to do just an insane, like overly dramatic sneeze at the beginning of your movie to show that he's getting sick because Sandra Bullock has warned him that he's going to get a cold in 2004 because everyone got colds. Like he will deliver that sneeze for you.
Taylor, you're the person of my dreams. Thank you for making sure we got that sneeze commentary in here because
I couldn't forget to circle back to that. Yes. Yeah. He's like, I will sell the sneeze like I've never sold anything in my life. But yes, so he's definitely like, and you know, if he could sell a quieter like moment, just you know, crying over his dad, he could do that too. He's very good at his job.
Oh my God. Yeah, he really is. So now he's like, now that I know we can send books in the mail, I'm not going to send you Persuasion still. But I think we can get together in person in 2 years. Like, name the date and time and place, and I will be there. And so she does. She says that I want to go to the nicest restaurant in town. It is the Millennium Park Grill.
Yeah, the Park Grill. Yes. It's fine. It's, you know, it's several months out, but a waitress is happy to take your reservation for 2 years in advance, and she will remember it, even though it's 2 years from now. So, this much tinier moment in her life, she will remember, even though I myself am face blind and cannot remember your face.
Yeah. She says it might be under Forster or it might be under Weiler. And she goes, Weiler?
Weiler. Yes.
Wow. And then
so
Sandy sits there
yes,
for hours.
It's true. He does not make it.
Because he didn't make it.
Yes. Well, yeah, because
he's dead kind of make it.
There's a half hour of the movie left. And B, yes, having seen the end of the movie, we know he was hit by a bus a year before.
He was, he's from Deadtown.
She responds, though, by just immediately giving up on the idea of meeting. She literally, in this letter where she's like, life's too short, we can't meet, I give up immediately. She literally mentions the man who died of being hit by a bus in front of her in this letter and still does not connect the dots. I think it's maybe
brilliant.
Meant to remind us of that.
It's to explain why he was at the park in the first place, because he knows that that's the only place, like in the future, that's the only place he knows she's going to be. Because the whole thing, listener, is that she says, life's too short for these kind of fantastical relationships that don't exist in real life, because I should know. It's not that I'm a doctor and I see death all the time. It's that there was this one man in Daly Park Plaza, and it was and it was Valentine's Day 2006. Okay, he died in my arms. Yes, and oh God, it's so good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then she's like, don't write to me again. Yes. I'm not coming to this mailbox.
He sends her a bunch of mail anyways. She does not read it. He does later put it in that box in the attic, which she will just never look at. So
never look at. And he knows it. He knows. Yes. Listen, Taylor, we have to talk about this for, 6 hours. He knows that she will never look in that box. Yes. He could just leave an empty fucking box up there instead of the treasure trove of letters. And what he does instead, we find out in a little while, listener, is he does a legit beanie to go into her unit and pry up a floorboard and leave Persuasion wrapped in there, but not all of his letters.
No, and also, like, oh my God. Yeah. So this thing with the book, like, I don't know when exactly this apartment was built, but it seemed new and it seemed like right around the time she was moving into it. So it can't have been until about did he sneak up there while it was still under construction, or did he like wait for the perfect moment to, and like that's an apartment building like that also would never have floorboards like that.
That's not the kind of floorboards they have. That's a cabin floorboard.
Yes, that's for a very old house. This building is almost definitely like got like concrete slab floor. Like these guys like hiding this book in there. Yeah, man, like,
and it is weathered all to hell. What happened to that book in that floorboard? You know what I mean?
I know.
Did he throw it in a puddle before just to like make it extra dramatic? I don't know. And he doesn't even leave a note in there.
I know. She's just like, oh, he must have snuck into my apartment at some point. This is where just all of the rest of my questions came in.
Oh, it was amazing.
How did it get here? They're also so vague about where that place is. Like, I spent way too much time trying to be like, this isn't the lake house in 2005, right? This is her new apartment in 2007. Because it's not full of glass, but like, this doesn't look like her apartment building either. Like, she's with her boyfriend though, so I guess he's moved into this apartment. Like,
yeah, or like, no, because I thought for a minute I was like, did she move in with him? But then what's his nuts wouldn't know where that is.
Exactly. Well, and so in the next scene, like when they're at a new old house, and she's like, I think
I'm sorry.
Out of my apartment.
Wait, is there any? I'm sorry, I jumped us ahead. Is there anything we need to talk about before we do?
Well, so Keanu moves out of the lake house. I think he's there for he must be there for about a year, like all of 2004, because then Kate has to be there for some amount of time before she then moves out in 2006. So they must have both been at the lake house for about a year. Him in 2004 and her in 2005. So he moves out at, I think, the end of 2004. The dog runs off. He gives the keys to the lake house to the inadequate boyfriend.
I have to ask you about this too. I'm so sorry. Yes. So Keanu does lock up that whole house.
Yes.
And then he drives to this man's law firm that's in, like, I don't know, like a suburb somewhere. It's in
I think it must be the same suburb that this job site and the boyfriend's house is at. Like, and it's all got to be somewhere near the lake house, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's all like, suburban Lake Chicago.
So we know that they are broken up because we know that he broke up with her after she did make out with somebody else's face in front of him and then lied about it. Okay, Sandy. But then Keanu gives the keys to him and he says, are you still interested in the lake house? And he's like, what are you even doing here? And Keanu's like, it's what Kate wants. And he's like, how do you know what Kate wants? And then he's like, I just do. And then he walks away.
Not a bad question. How does he? I mean, without getting into, I guess the fact that it's like, no, man, she will live here. I'm just trying to keep the timeline in place.
So then is it that while they're broken up, he didn't hand him any papers that's like, pay the rent to this address? He didn't. Is he renting it? Like, is she renting it? How did it happen? Are they living there together and then they break up after?
Well, and this is the dog runs up to the boyfriend, and then I guess they just keep him.
That's just their dog now.
Yeah, he just gives the dog to Sandra. It's like, hey, I know we're broken up, but this guy gave me these keys for a lake house. I don't know where it is, but if you want it, here are the keys and this dog.
You have a dog now? Congratulations.
Yeah.
Dog comes with house. Good luck finding it.
A lot of past some details that happens here.
For sure.
Yes, we're just supposed to go with it, which fine.
And I did.
Yes, I did. More fridge logic.
Yes.
Oh, and then Keanu and his brother start the architecture firm. That was the other thing that happened. So they do start Visionary Vanguard Associates.
And her whole thing in her letter was like, I have to start living the life that I have. So it at some point cuts to her being like at drinks with other doctors. And she gets a call from Morgan. He's in town. Do you want to get together? Yes, I do. And then she says like, she is the queen of negging this man.
I know.
She says, it was really nice to hear your voice. I was surprised at how nice it was to hear your voice. And this man is just looking for any scrap he can get.
Yes. Great. Moving in tomorrow. Yeah.
He's like, the romance. I've never been more wined and dined in my life. Oh God, it's incredible. So like they start living together.
The smallest scraps.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's it. At the end of this night, she pointedly looks up at the tree and she's like, "Look, Keanu's tree. Watch me kiss this motherfucker now."
Oh,
and then she lays one on him.
So I missed that scene. I gotcha. I think I remember that from the first time I watched it. But yes, it's just a great, like, you know, there's that tree he planted for me. This inadequate boyfriend will never do anything like this, but he is here in my time. So
we'll kiss. Yeah.
Yes.
So then this is my only way to really explain this logic. Then she finds persuasion in her floorboards. Okay.
Yes. I have to move out of this place immediately.
Yes. She's like, this fucking stalker won't come see me in real life, but he will break into my house to leave me an old book. What the fuck?
Yes. She doesn't tell her boyfriend that. She's just like, they're at this new house. It's like it looks like it's dilapidated and falling down. She's like, no, we've been in my apartment over a year. We have to move. Like, yes.
Like she says, she looks at him pointedly and she says, I want to keep moving forward. And he's like, okay,
like,
I can.
You won't know what I mean by this, but I do.
So
Viewer
then,
will. Yes.
Yeah. Listener will. So then,
yes,
they go to Visionary Vanguard, and she's like, "Yeah, I found this new firm."
Yes.
And
and this. Okay, so this building was just like the perfect location choice for this architecture firm.
Ooh.
I loved this so much. So this is the Santa Fe building. It's right on Michigan Avenue. I think it's also called the Railway Exchange building, but the Santa Fe Railroad used to be in there. And
neat.
And so for years, I don't think it's there anymore, but for years the Chicago Architecture Foundation had space on the ground floor, and they would keep this like almost like lobby sized model of downtown Chicago in there. It lit up. It was very cool. And there's like also a lot of like big famous Chicago architecture firms that have offices in that building.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So SOM, which is the firm that did it's now the Willis Tower. It used to be the Sears Tower and the John Hancock building. They're in that building. If you've ever been to Chicago, Chicago does lots of cool stuff with lights for different times of the year. And there's this Blue Cross Blue Shield building on Millennium Park that has they'll write messages in the windows with by turning on lights in the building and like pulling down shades and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
So that building was designed by another architect who's also in that building. And then my husband, before he became a sleazy developer, as Keanu's dad would call him, he worked for an architecture firm in that building. So so there's a ton of architects. And then my other favorite thing about this building is so my grandpa lived in Chicago, and he worked for a railroad company, and he did a lot of business in that building as well.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I was so excited to see them show up in the lobby of this building because it's really beautiful. And from what I can tell, it seemed like at least the Visionary Vanguard kind of lobby of the firm that they go into is still in there. So I'm very curious, maybe they just used an extra space in that spot, but yeah. So I just got very excited.
That is so neat. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love this inside baseball moment. Yes. Bing boom bong architecture at the Santa Fe building.
Great choice on the part of the location scout, and yes, good job to Keanu's brother and Keanu for choosing that building to put Visionary Vanguard Associates in.
Okay, so it's apparently Valentine's Day right now, and simultaneously we see Keanu figure out that it's Valentine's Day in 2006, and then we also see he and his brother walking down the street, and I learned a new way that Hollywood tells people they're architects, because they're carrying those giant portfolio cases, which I haven't seen one of those since school, and even then most people did not use them.
using computers for a lot longer in our world than the lake house world, I guess. But yeah, so they're walking down the street and they underline at least like 6 times that it is indeed Valentine's Day, February 14th of the year 2006. Yeah. He's like, I don't know if it took him a while to get it or they're just really trying to make sure we get it. But yes, he does discover that it's Valentine's Day of the day that Sandra wrote him about being in Daley Plaza.
Yeah. So, and then he starts rushing somewhere.
Yes.
And it's everybody's on the edge of their seats. Oh no. And then, yeah, in 2008, Sandra Bullock and Morgan, poor Morgan, justice for Morgan. He and Mona need to get together.
Yes. Exactly.
They go they can. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say they can just both be like slightly too needy and try hard together, and they'll be so happy.
They'll be so happy together. Oh my God, they speak each other's love languages. It's effort, you know.
Yes.
So then she's there with Morgan to be like,
yes.
I need you to turn this dilapidated place into the place of my dreams. And then at the end of the meeting, she sees a drawing of the lake house.
Yes, a sketch of the lake house. And so she finds out that this architect she's talking to is Keanu's brother. Keanu did die 2 years ago. And C, it was the guy she couldn't save. She's just got to do something with this information. And this time she is going to save him. So she just like runs out of the building with no explanation for Morgan.
Morgan just, is like, hot on her heels being like, hello, wait, where are you going? Kate, yes. Come back.
Yes. But he talks the entire movie about how busy he is. So maybe he just goes back to work. But
he has no other choice. No. So then she rushes out to the lake house.
Yes. Driving frantically. Like there are then like a lot of shots of her just like dramatically praying next to a mailbox. And yeah. So
and the voiceover is her letter, and it says like, oh, you were the man and I couldn't save you. And so don't go. Please don't go.
Right. Do not go to Daley Plaza.
Yeah. She says, I love you. I haven't said that before, but I love you. And like, come to the lake house. I'm here. I'm waiting. And she's sobbing next to the lake house.
Yes. And so meanwhile, we're kind of seeing this overlaid with, Keanu, he's been struck by this memory of her, and they even do a flashback back to that scene, and like they've got a very poorly aged comment about global warming being not a big deal because it was so warm in April or February. But so we're meant to think that she has not gotten her message, which I'm not sure when he would have had time to drive up to the lake house and get it, or why he would even think to do that, because he's downtown talking to his brother.
Yeah.
And then he's back downtown again. At some point he had to go up to the lake house and get this letter. So he knew to wait for her and not get hit by a bus. And that's just like a lot of driving for one, especially in Chicago, which is, a real traffic nightmare. But like, anyway, so we're just watching him in Daley Plaza, and he thinks about going over to see her,
and he has the letter in his hand. Yeah. It's like the letter from I guess 2008, maybe.
Yes.
Because she says like, don't go, and if you care about me at all anymore, come to the lake house or whatever. And so he's standing at the place he would walk across the street and be hit by the bus. He sees her and her mom, and she says, just wait for me. Wait 2 years. And he does. So when she's at the mailbox, she's like, crying and praying.
Yeah, there's on her praying. Knees.
And then she sees the little flapper boy, that flag boy go down,
the
and
mailbox flag goes down, and he's gotten her letter. She does not even open the mailbox to look and see, but we hear a car pull up.
The rumble of a truck. All right, everyone.
I do kind of like to imagine that Keanu was hanging out with his brother like again on Valentine's Day in 2008 and like once again had to be like dramatically reminded multiple times that so he had somewhere he needed to be.
Yeah.
But it's him and he's looking so good. He's got a nice little turtleneck and his camel colored coat and
that turtleneck.
So handsome. Yes.
Oh my God. And she says, "You came." And then he kisses her face off.
Yes. I feel like if it's possible for a kiss to exist that would make up for the fact that they're like barely on screen together in this entire movie, then this would be this kiss. It's a very, very good kiss.
Oh, it is ardent.
It's on going.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much chemistry and he's so happy and he waited 4 years and he really sells it. Like, this is like, I feel like we've gotten very used to like the kisses at the end of most like Hallmark movies. And this is not that. This man is a professional. Like,
oh my. Yeah. This was a thing of beauty.
Yes. At one point, they stop for an embrace, and then he just kisses her some more. And yeah, it just keeps going. It's great. It's perfect. And then they walk arm in arm
into the lake house.
That I guess he still owns it. Like, even no one's living in there anymore. I assume, because I guess if he was like, did she just send him rent every month while she was there? Like,
I don't know. I'm so confused.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, and yeah, like I said at some point in our time nonsense conversation, I do have questions like, will his brother just forget that he told Sandra Bullock earlier that day that his brother died in a bus accident, or like
did they have that meeting
just got rewritten at that
all
moment?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, did they have that meeting at all for the brother? I don't know. I have to assume no.
If they did, wouldn't Keanu have been there? Like, at that meeting? Like,
yeah, because he wouldn't be dead.
But the movie's over. It was a great kiss at the end, and
that's the one. That's exactly it. Priorities, everyone.
Yes. So they did do a great job. They're back together, and whatever. I'm very curious if they'll try and live at this lake house and what they'll do about this mailbox. But we'll just assume they lived happily ever after.
Oh yeah, what do they do about this mail? Do they ever get actual mail there, or are they getting mail from 2 years ago?
Does another I didn't even stop to ponder until now.
Oh,
like,
no.
I hope they get actual mail too. Like, that seems different. I mean, maybe that's how he got the rent. And she was just putting in the mailbox. It was just going straight to him. But
maybe, yeah. He just never looked at the date of those checks. It's fine.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is a thing of beauty. I fucking loved this movie. I hadn't heard of it until your email suggesting it. I hadn't even heard of it.
I had not seen it in a long time. Like, I think since maybe it came out, but I was delighted to watch it again. Like I said at the beginning, I felt like it really held up. And I mean, I don't know, not everyone I feel like could carry off a movie where they are on screen together so little, but still have just this amazing chemistry. And I think they really sold it. So,
oh God, yeah, these two are some of those actors. I was just talking to Sarah Wendell about the actors who play Jamie and Claire in Outlander.
Oh, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know how
also
you have
chemistry. Yeah.
I don't know how you have blistering chemistry like that and not bone outside of work. Like, how are Keanu and Sandra not together forever? How?
I know. It was beautiful.
It really was. They're such amazing actors. Oh, yeah. This was a big romance. And I'm so glad I got to do it with like a legit architect. This is incredible.
Yeah, I feel like as far as the architecture they did do a really, like, I feel like, I don't know, a lot of movies really they're just like, yeah, this person has they're carrying around a giant model. They're an architect. Don't think
Yeah.
they're like, if we're gonna make him an architect, we're actually gonna make it a little bit part of the story, and we're gonna make it like part of the characters too. Like, I think it was very like integral to his dad and his relationship with his brother, and the fact that this is all happening in a house, like, and it's because of this magical house and magical mailbox and all of that, like. So yeah, it was great.
It really was. I loved it. Oh my gosh. Okay. Do you have a lady love?
I do. Yeah. So actually, if you like epistolary romances and you like stories with weird premises, so this came out like last summer or fall, I think, and I just read it recently, and it was The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon.
Ooh.
It's a little bit like the setup of You Got Mail, where it's like two enemies and they're writing letters to each other but don't know they're writing to each other.
Ooh.
But it's also like a fantasy world that's a little bit 1950s, but it's also like set on the edge of another dimension with zombies in it. It's crazy. It's great world building. It's the characters are like super charming.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a great read. So that
nice. Okay, my lady love. I don't know if I've said it officially on the podcast or not. I think it might have only been in a Patreon episode with Naima. Doesn't matter. I have been loving this podcast called Love Murder because two of my interests are romance and true crime, and they do both at the same time. So
perfect.
Yeah, it's great. All of their cases are love gone fatally wrong, they say. It's two best friends, and it's just lovely. Yeah, so Love Murder.
Awesome.
Big fan. I've gone through their whole backlist. I think I have 3 episodes that I haven't listened to yet, and I'm very sad I'm coming to the end of the backlist.
Oh, that's so hard. Yeah, when you're like really into something, like running out of new stuff, and then you have to just be on the same schedule as everyone else.
And then you're like, a week? Are you serious?
Right,
a week?
Right. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm much more forgiving about that because knowing what goes into a podcast, I'm like, girl, take a week.
Like, for sure. Yeah. Much time as you need.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Love Murder. Yeah. All right. Keep being a badass.
And love yourself as much as you love just unnecessarily sneaking into someone's house to leave a book for them that you could have just mailed.
Could have just mailed it. Yeah. Just take on that B&E, you know? Put your burgle pants on and get in there.
Yeah, it's for love.
Oh my God. Hey, you. Yes, listener, you. Are you loving the show? If so, please leave a rating and review in your podcast app. The 90 seconds you take to say something nice not only helps new people find the show, but it makes me super smile over at HBHQ. Also, I've had a few people ask, and the answer is yes. We are still doing the 5-star bribe. If you leave us a review with 5 stars, then we'll do whatever book you want. We're real deep into the list though, so it might be a while. Lilas! Okay, back to the show.